Good afternoon and welcome to LVS Perspectives number 69, an audience with Iain Bell. I am absolutely delighted and honoured to have Iain here today. Iain's been working with our highly able musicians this morning and I walked in at the end and they seem to have having lots of fun. And Iain's going to present to you about his life and career and his music, and then as usual if you've got any questions for Iain please send them in, or you can send them through on my phone if you'd rather be a little bit more anonymous, and then I'm sure I've got loads of questions for you, Iain.
Bring them on.
Okay, so I'm going to hand over to you.
Okay, it's a pleasure to be here with you all today. As Christine has slightly suggested, I'm a classical composer, so that means I write music to order, and I'm very fortunate that that music is performed around the world. Now, a composer can be engaged to write any type of music, and that can be ads, radio music, jingles, pop music, musical theatre, all the way through to symphonies, to operas. You know, we are people who are engaged to write music. That's a composer. Sometimes confused with a conductor, who tends to be the person that leads the orchestra at the front. But yeah, I'm a composer, and my area of, I guess, expertise and what I'm engaged to perform has been what would be considered classical contemporary music. So that is the symphonic stuff, operas, things that would be in a concert hall like Wigmore Hall or Carnegie Hall. So that is who I am, and that is kind of what I do. My link with Christine and LVS actually goes back further than that. 25 years ago, Mrs. Cunniff, as she was known to the world then, was my music A-level student, my teacher. She wasn't my student.
I think I probably was a student actually, Iain.
Sorry, apologies. My teacher. So, and we've stayed in contact ever since. Yeah. And she's witnessed this very fortunate journey I've been on. So I wanted to give you a bit of background about how I came up, the way I came up to where I got to, because I want to show you that there's no one way. All you need to do is have passion and belief, and in my instance, a very supportive family. But there is so more than one way, and classical music is so more than one thing, and I wanted to be a demonstration of that fact. So going to the very back, I was born in 1980 to a very non-musical family. I'm one of 5 boys. There are 4 of us, and we all have our own varied, and I'm going to change the slide now, our varied modes of expression. You know, some of us are more sporty. When you're talking about 5 of us, you know, some more artistic. I showed a musical affinity that hadn't been known in my family, but I had parents that were quite receptive to it, so they could see that I was listening to music and be able to repeat it back really quickly, that I had a really good ear. So, you know, as soon as I started recorder at school, they then got me a keyboard, because they thought, well, at the age of 4 or 5, he's playing by ear, so let's get him a keyboard. So I got a keyboard, and the keyboards got bigger. Now, my family were always encouraged never to get me lessons, to get me any kind of piano lessons, because they were told that that could potentially quell what was my natural musical instincts at the time. And I think they made the right call in this instance, because it meant that my music making was always about my pleasure. It was always about something that I wanted to do. I was never obliged to practice. It meant that things that should have been better, like scales and sight reading, were always atrocious with me, because I was only ever playing what I wanted to play. But it meant that I was always playing for pleasure, and therefore composing. I didn't know what composing was. I was just expressing myself at the piano. But I had this way of being able to express myself that had no checks or measures. It meant that I was just doing it as a form of expression, not waiting for any kind of muse to descend, not waiting for any kind of rarefied moment of silence, because I was never going to get it in a household of 7 people. So it just meant that I was a very organic and very, very happy, self-motivated composer, musician, baby musician. So I carried on. I got myself eventually to grade 8 standard on the piano, sight reading not included. I did music GCSE and went on to do music A-level with harmony, with you, harmony and score analysis with you. And I was meant to, as a native French, well, not native, I was a fluent French speaker at the time. My plan was always to have been an interpreter. I was going to be an interpreter for the UN or the EU, with my earpiece in. That was the way I was going to go. It was just going to be that way. It wasn't that I was told I couldn't be a musician. I just knew that I didn't even know that was a thing that was open to me. So it wasn't that my family were ever in any way discouraging. It's just that it just didn't even occur to me that that could be an option until 2 weeks before A-level results. I've got my place to read music French at university as a first language, and I say to my mum and dad, nope, I can't do this. I'm a musician. I appreciate what a degree in French would do for me and for my fluency, but here I am a musician. I can't deny it. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means for my future, but I'm a musician. So my parents very, very kindly say, okay, defer, get a place to read music at university. Next year, take a year out and defer. So I did that. We kind of get to the June, July of the next year, and I'm thinking, I don't want to go to university. I've been this maverick. I've been this lone wolf, this renegade kind of spirit. I want to carry on doing what I'm doing. I want to carry on on that way that I didn't know what it looked like, but I know what it felt like. So Mum and Dad said, okay, get a job, which was fair. That's too right. I was 19, get a job, and do what you need to do. So okay, I thought, fair point, well made. So I thought, well, what can I do that gets me a fair whack of money? Well, okay, I like being in gyms. I know that a personal training qualification is only a handful of months to get, and they pay quite well. So I became very quickly a qualified personal trainer and got a job in a gym. We've got lots of happenstance and fluke happening now, so prepare yourself. So I got a job in a gym in Barbican in central London as a personal trainer and a fitness instructor, 2003. And I was just there to get my head down, earn some money, while I kind of thought, what is my life going to look like? What is this musical life that I'm aspiring to going to be like? Happenstance interjects whereby this gym, unbeknownst to me at the time, happened to be right next door to the Guildhall School of Music, which is one of the foremost musical institutions in the UK for musical higher education. And lots of these Guildhall School of Music students were coming to the gym. They were coming to the gym to train, to just blow off steam between whatever they were doing. And I became this object of curiosity for them, because I was this personal trainer in there in my early 20s who claimed to be a musician, who claimed to be one of them, whether or not, they were curious. But they were kind in their curiosity, and that was lovely. And so what I would be doing would be working 40 hours a week at this gym, and then wonderfully, the City of London, being in the City of London, has the Barbican Library. And the Barbican Library had the biggest free score library, I think, in the country. So I would be working in the gym these 40 hours a week, and then of an evening, I would be going to the Barbican Score Library to just study every single score. So I'd be from the well-knowns like your Mozarts and your Strausses and whatnot, all the way to the much more modern contemporary stuff like Ligeti, Penderecki, stuff that kind of can be a bit, but I was drinking it all in. And at the same time, lots of these students are taking an interest in my work, and they're singing some of the stuff I'm going to, and then doing some recordings. I'm thinking, okay, this feels right, this feels organic, this feels like the way it's going to go. I'm going to come up with these people, and let's just see where it goes. I'm still working at the gym. And I have personal training clients, some of whom are into classical music and are into the fact that I'm into it, and lending me DVDs and whatnot of operas. And now one of them lent me a DVD of an opera of Mozart's Magic Flute, which is one of his best known operas. And there's a role in the Magic Flute called the Queen of the Night. And the Queen of the Night, she's a witch. She's an evil role. She's the villain of the piece. And plot notwithstanding, the role itself is probably one of the hardest roles in opera because it's called a coloratura soprano role. So that's at the highest of the female voices and a bit more higher too. So it's high, but then some. And she has to do all these flexible things, and she has to be able to do all these agile things that she has to convey her feelings. And I saw this woman playing it, and my jaw dropped. Not only was she able to do all this crazy technical virtuoso stuff, but she was acting up a storm. And I thought, I just fell in love musically. It was, who is this person? We get to something in a bit, but there's a reason I'm saying that. So I'm continuing training these people with my clients at the gym, talking to the Guildhall School of Music people. One of my clients who lent me this DVD, the Magic Flute DVD, her husband broke his leg. She had, therefore, a spare ticket for an opera at the Royal Opera House, Strauss's Arabella, a very rarely performed opera in the UK particularly. She said, would you like to come? I said, absolutely, I'd love to come. So we went to the Royal Opera House. It was my first time in the Royal Opera House. And we get there, and I'm excited, sitting at the front row of the dress circle. So it felt really fancy, and it felt like, how the other half live. And we get to the seat, we get and read the cast list. I hadn't done any due diligence before. And I think back 2003, 2004, I don't think websites were what they were in terms of information. So we get there, I read the cast list, and this woman who was the Queen of the Night was in it. I was thinking, my God. Now, as I told the students in the talk I've just given, my body became consumed with this kind of heat. And I haven't ever had this feeling properly since. I was just so consumed with this unusual feeling of heat, and I couldn't concentrate, I couldn't focus. I can't remember anything about the performance, but I knew I had to speak to this lady afterwards. I knew I had to engage with this amazing singer who'd given me so much. So I decided to, at stage door, say something. Didn't know what I was going to say, and it ended up being something on the lines of, hello, I'll go back to my normal voice now, but just to convey the kind of fear and the fact I was so sublimated, so scared. I said to this lady, to this amazing soprano, would you like some free personal training? And she said, yes, I would. So, now, amazing. So we then have what becomes 10, 11 sessions. 6 sessions in, I still haven't told her that I'm a composer. And because we were getting on so well. And I thought, well, if I tell her I'm a composer, I don't have to think in any way that I'm using her or that I'm abusing this position. I have no perception that I'd be in her orbit, let alone work with her. Me training her was just about me giving something back to someone who'd given me so much, and to just be in their space of someone who's so amazing. But my dad said to me, no, you will regret not telling her more than you will regret telling her. So I said, I'm a personal trainer. Sorry, no, I'm a personal trainer. I said, I'm a composer. And she said, oh, can I hear something? And I said, sure. So I played her something, and she said, would you write something for me? I said, absolutely. There's no question I would write something. So she said, I'm going to be having my debut at the Metropolitan Opera. Would you like to come stay with me for a little bit while I'm out there, and we can talk about this piece you write for me? I said, absolutely, I'm there. So that happened. I wrote her a song cycle to start with. Now, a song cycle is a collection of poems that are set to music. It can be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 poems. I wrote her one of those. Then I wrote her another one of those. And then I wrote her an orchestral song cycle. And we get to about 2010. And she says, let's do an opera. So by this point, she and I are best friends. I was best man at her wedding. And she opened the doors. Now, people can open doors for you. It's incumbent on you to stay in the room. But I credit her, Deanna Damrau, with opening the doors, being the one that said yes. Now, I'm going to just play you a little clip of the aria, 2.5, 3 minute long aria, that made me fall in love with this amazing musician. And again, here we go. So that is who I got to work with. So I said that she said, let's do an opera. What do you write with a musician like that, who is capable of all of that? To write an opera for someone, it took some thought. We have got someone that's the most capable of performers. And although I'll be talking about more in a minute, we lit upon Hogarth's Harlot's Progress as an opera, and it premiered in Vienna in 2013 with a libretto, with a script, with a text by Peter Ackroyd. And I was told recently that I was the first British composer in 200 years to have an opera premiere in Vienna. So that was really, really lovely. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what actually it means to be a composer, what I do, what my life looks like, and what composing is in general. So we as composers, we don't have agents. Actors have agents who get their work for them, do all that kind of stuff. We have publishers, historically speaking. Now, publisher, as it sounds, is someone that's responsible for producing the scores. That's the first and foremost initial responsibility that they have. They produce the scores. Secondary to that, they do contract negotiation. And in producing the scores, they also make sure the scores are edited. So by edited, that just means that my musical grammar is what it should be. With book editing, that's more about plot focus and, you know, storytelling. With music editing, it's making sure my musical grammar is where it should be. So I'm using all the right keys, I'm using the right dynamics, and it all follows the format the score should, so the score is as clear as possible to read. So I was able to be signed by a publisher, 2009, 2010. And they took on the responsibility then of doing all my contracts and whatnot. So I was then working with Diana, and then the other singers that I was working with, I was getting to a level of renown, an early level renown, whereby institutions would start to approach me about composing music for them. They would have a suggestion of a piece or an idea or actual, no, we want you to write this, and they would set the means out. So it'd be for these instruments, this duration, this will be the deadline. Obviously, as a composer, you have to keep deadlines because you have lots of people waiting around you. So if I were not to hit a deadline, it would mean the musicians who are meant to learn the music in time, because it's all new, the musicians who are meant to learn the music wouldn't have it in time, which would jeopardize their performance. But even before that, it would mean that the editor who's meant to then edit my score wouldn't get it in time, which means their time is concertinaed up. Now, I have always been really lucky to be pretty fluent with writing. I'm quite quick. And I do remember it meant so much that my first ever editor, her husband, when we were in Vienna for the premiere of A Harlot's Progress, he thanked me for being prompt with my scores, because I was one of the first composers she'd worked with where she didn't have to stay up at night, where she actually got to be with her family. So I take great responsibility, and I think there is a responsibility to your colleagues and not just to yourself for waiting for that muse, as I spoke about, to descend. I think you have to think about yourself as part of a chain, a part of a village of people. Although no one else is writing the notes for me, in order for the music to be put on the stands, there's a whole chain of people that need to be involved. And I think as long as you remember you're just a link in that, you will always think thoughtfully and kindly. So my publishers would negotiate contracts, and that would be everything from the fee, delivery date, also whether I get accommodation, whether I get travel expenses, things like that. You know, they would be taking care of all that nitty-gritty as I'm working on the score and delivering. Now, much like the students here at LVS, I work with Sibelius, which is the industry standard notation software. So much like you type in Word or Pages to write your letter, you have everything there. I will, sitting at Sibelius, which is named after a composer, Sibelius, I'll be sitting there, and much as you have your letters, I have my notes, so I'll be able to drag a crotchet to that note. You know, it's just like word processing, but in just a different software. So I get something that looks like what you can see on the screen in front of me. That's what I do. That's what I see every day. But I love it. So yeah, that's how the generic day of the life of a composer starts. Now me, I have my own routine that I have found works for me. So I get up very early, and I like first thing in the morning just to go to the gym. For me, it presses reset. I think any type of activity, whether it's just walking, I think it just presses reset on my brain and reset on my ears. So once I've got that out of the way, it's done. It also wakes me up a bit because 6 o'clock isn't a pleasant time for anyone to wake up. So it eases me up. Come back home, have breakfast, get myself all clean and showered up. And I like to be, so when I get back from the gym, this is my little routine. In my room that I'm writing in, I will light a Yankee candle, a scented candle, just half an hour before I start writing, go and shower, breakfast. So by the time I come back in, the room smells nice. It just sets a nice environment up for me. It's ritualistic, but it just means it's a soft landing. So when I first start writing, if I'm in the middle of a piece, I will sit down and I will go over what I did the day before, just to make sure that it is as good as I thought it was the day before, and anything that needs to be polished or refined. Because when you come back with fresh ears, you hear things totally differently. And that night away from the desk and with other sounds and no sounds and sleep is so restorative. So I would like to write till about lunchtime. That's 12:30ish, have a bit of lunch. Then I'll come back. Now, the 2-3 hours I've done in the morning, that is the best time. That's when I'm at my, generally, when I'm at my most fluent and I'm at my most imaginative and creative. So by the time we get into a little second section, I'm still writing, I'm still creating, but the focus at that point is more polishing and refining what I've done that morning, just reworking, retooling some of the stuff. Then I'll have a rest. And then kind of by this point, my ears are tired. And by that, more specifically, I mean, I find it hard to actually have any discrimination with what I'm hearing, whether it's, quality control is gone by that point. I can't, and I'm not very good at generating any new material by that point, after kind of 5, 6, 7 hours of writing. So at that juncture, I will just, for half an hour, just make sure all the grammar of what I've written that day is right. So that's to make sure all the rhythms are correct, all the things that are meant to, the musical grammar as I've suggested, the phrasing is all correct. I've got a checklist. There's a checklist that I tick off every day. And once that's done, I'm done for the day. I'm married and I need to invest as much time in my marriage as I do in myself. And it's very, very important that I respect my work, but also respect my marriage and respect my family. And that is of the utmost importance. So that is my day, and I then get to rest my little ears. I think with regards to how I work, I think, one thing I find really important, I can sometimes drive myself a bit too hard and not want to take days off. I kind of feel the accumulation of minutes. I'm like, I'm doing really well. And we all need time off. We all need days off, and we all need to rest. And one thing I have, and I need to get better at actually, is implementing days off. I need to get better at that because I've got this work ethic where I feel I'm being lazy. If I have to work 56 days on the trot, that's rubbish. And I'll often come back feeling so much better having had a day off. Or I will sometimes feel resentful that something takes me away from my desk, be it a rehearsal, a wonderful thing. But I know I have to remind myself that I will always come back feeling so much more vivified, and the ears will be even more awake and alert. That's how my days work. And what I wanted to do now, before we talk between us, is actually, I've spoken about the music. I'm going to let some of the music speak for itself a little bit now. So I just wanted to talk you through just some of my operas, because I've been on this most amazing journey of between 2013 and 2019. I had 5 operas premiere in those 6 years in wonderful houses. I was in Vienna, I was in Texas, I had something at the Royal Opera House, I was something at New York City Opera. I was living the dream, and I don't know how it all worked out, because if you told me at the time you'd be writing 5 operas in 6 years, I wouldn't have thought it would have been possible, but it just so happened that everything slotted. Timing came through for me. And just keeping focused and keeping disciplined. But timing, I was very blessed with timing, because with one or two of the things, had we had a month out, it would have thrown everything. So first of all, I just want to go through the operas very quickly, just so I can share what is the mainstay of my work. So this is a scene from A Harlot's Progress, based, as I said, on Peter Ackroyd's libretto, but based on William Hogarth's pictures, staged in Vienna. This is an aria from it. This is the trailer. So what you're going to hear is one aria, but you're going to actually see a distillation of the action. It's about 2.5 minutes long of the opera. So you can see Harlot's Progress in Vienna. And this is with that soprano who started it all off for me, Diana Damrau. So that was A Harlot's Progress. Now, midway through writing that, there had been a little bit of a stir about this young composer writing operas with these big singers. And I was approached by a couple of different opera houses about things. And one of them was Houston Grand Opera. And they said, we would be interested in working with you. What have you got for us? I spoke about The Harlot. They thought the subject matter may be a bit risque for a Texan audience. So they said, what else have you got? And me always having 5 operas down the line, I thought, well, Harlot's Progress starts really light, ends really dark. I'd like something that starts really dark and ends really light. And I thought I would love to do Christmas Carol. So I was commissioned to do an adaptation of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, which opened at the Houston Grand Opera in 2014. But it was, rather than a grand opera with multiple characters, chorus and whatnot, it was actually an adaptation of Dickens' own one-man version that he himself used to perform, doing all the roles himself. So I did an adaptation of one-man opera, which opened at Houston Grand Opera 2014. It's then been heard in Wales. It was just heard now in Chicago, just last Christmas. So that's continuing. And then, before The Harlot's Progress as well, I was approached by Welsh National Opera. Now, this was 2013. They said to me, 2016 is a really important anniversary. It's the centenary of the Battle of the Somme. And we would like to commission an opera to commemorate the Battle of the Somme based on the quite obscure epic poem by David Jones called In Parenthesis. Would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. To be approached about a national commemorative piece, it was a joy. It was performed at Welsh National Opera at the Millennium Centre in Cardiff, and then had 2 performances at the Royal Opera House. And the actual Opera House performances were on the exact anniversary to the day of the Battle of the Somme. So it meant an awful lot. I now like to say I only like to take commissions on that scare me, that have an element that makes me push myself as a musician. And to have to convey the brutality and the martial quality of the battlefield, really, I felt it really pushed me as an orchestrator particularly. So I'm just going to play you just a 1-minute trailer, actually, from the piece that you'll hear now, In Parenthesis. And then on the back of that, I was approached by the English National Opera to do an opera. They asked me what I'd like to do, and I'd always had the idea of doing a trilogy of London operas. I'd already done A Harlot's Progress and I'd already done A Christmas Carol. So I said, I'd like to do a Jack the Ripper opera, but without Jack. I wanted it to be about the women. I wanted it to be about the London that could cause this to happen, and particularly with reference to the women. So they would not be defined by the way they died, but in fact by the way they lived. And to me, this is particularly important in opera because there is very little gender parity in opera. Whenever I can, I always strive to have gender parity. So Harlot's Progress had 3 men, 3 women. With Jack the Ripper, we had more women than men. And another issue in opera is that roles, legitimate main roles for women over the age of 45, 50 are so scarce. There are so few roles that aren't the grandmother or the nurse or the person with 3 lines. So within the Jack the Ripper story, Jack the Ripper, the Women of Whitechapel story, I had the great honour of writing 5 roles for women over the age of 50. And that over the age of 60, pardon me, and that meant an awful lot. Particularly one of the cast was Dame Josephine Barstow, who was 80 and still had a top C. And the young childhood me was also very happy because in the cast was also Leslie Garrett. And Leslie Garrett is one of the people that introduced me to opera. I know what opera was because of Leslie Garrett being such an amazing advocate for it in the 90s with her TV show. So to have her in the cast, as you can see in the purple on that little screen there with Susan Bullock, it was an honour. It was an honour to be around her and all these really strong women. So here is just another short trailer for that.
It's really dark and mysterious.
It's sort of an intense psychological drama, just at the edge of my seat the whole time.
A very unusual take on a traditional tale.
It was really moving, and I love that it centred so much around the women. The music was so beautiful and so interesting, and the voices in this show are absolutely stunning.
And finally, midway through orchestrating Jack the Ripper, the Women of Whitechapel, so we're talking now February 2018, I had a really, an email, a very panicky email from New York City Opera saying, we need to talk to you urgently. I always like those emails because there's always some kind of unknown, it's always exciting. So it transpired that for 2019, they wanted to commission a new opera that would commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riots, which were the riots in New York City, which gave birth to the Pride movement, the universal global Pride movement. We would like you to do the opera. And I thought, okay, they're amazing. They're wanting a young British composer who's principally been known for writing operas about Georgian prostitutes and things of British past to tell a New York story to a New York audience. Again, I was scared. And again, I think that fear pushed me to go deeper within myself, to think, what can I do to make this the best story I can? What can I do to be worthy of the material? And it was just an absolute joy. That was Stonewall 2019. It opened 3 months after Jack the Ripper, The Women of Whitechapel at E&O. That was an astonishing 3 months, an astonishing 6 months, and I just feel beyond grateful that I have been in a position to have been able to create all this music in such a relatively short amount of time, and for people to have received it so kindly. So that's my life. That's me as a composer. And I'm delighted to answer any questions you have or any thoughts you have.
Right, where do we start? Great, look, thank you so much, Iain. And I do have a lot of questions for you. And I know that, over the years we've had chats and, and I've often quizzed you about what's inspired you and where you get your ideas from and things like that. Because from my point of view, being a teacher, and obviously I knew you when you were at school, if someone had said to me that Iain Bell is going to be one of the most celebrated composers in the world by the time he's, and you're getting on a bit now, so
Actually, in the 40s,
yeah?
in the 40s,
Okay.
got 4 before my age.
I would have said, wow, amazing, because you've had such that journey, and that's a big risk, isn't it? So a lot of times, we have music lessons. I had music lessons myself, put my children through music lessons. It was very sort of like sort of brave of your parents as well to say, you don't need to do this.
Yeah,
I think that's amazing.
it's where I am is testament to my parents and to Deanna.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without both of their support, I wouldn't be anywhere.
But your passion for music was so evident, even in the A-level music class, and really, as you said, your passion was French, and we would talk about Debussy. His works.
That was a crossover.
And that was your passion, but your musical passion was always there.
Yeah.
And that's obviously what's just driven you all the way through.
Absolutely, but it wasn't. The passion was there. I didn't recognise it as a career.
No.
I think that was the only difference. I didn't see music equals money, music equals stability, music equals, I just saw music as what I love, but languages will get me a mortgage, Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that was the only difference until I had a kind of dark night of the soul at 17. Thought, now do or die, or die.
And part of the artistic process, so obviously when you're composing, it's like comparing a book to a film sometimes, isn't it? You will visualise in your head what is happening here, and then you see on stage what is happening. Is there a conflict there sometimes with the director or the conductor?
Oh, yes.
Or the...
I mean, so in order to be able to, while I'm writing for opera, for instance, I need to be able to see what's happening on stage, because I know if there's an action happening, say someone's taking a bucket of water from one side of the stage to another, I need to see it on stage to see how long it's going to take me, how much music I need to give that gesture. So I always visualise. See, it's a tricky one, because particularly in opera, you have to respect that everyone within the conveyor belt of opera should be at the top of their game, and you need to respect them being at the top of their game, and you need to trust them being at the top of their game. And the vast majority of times, the director has answered the libretto's demands and answered what I've said in the music. Mostly, I've had 1 or 2 occasions where they haven't, and that was tricky, because you can tell that the story isn't being told to its fullest potential, and that can be really difficult.
And it's down to interpretation as well, isn't it? It's what you interpret to be something.
Yes.
And what maybe a conductor or director
Yeah,
might
yes.
interpret
I
as
mean, and I would, when a piece is having its world premiere, for instance, that's when it's being seen and heard for the first time. And therefore, I think you need to be a little bit closer to the composer and the librettist's wishes. Because it's the first time it needs to be seen. It doesn't need to be reinterpreted for the first interpretation. It just needs to be shown disencumbered of any excess that a director may want to graft upon it. But yeah, you have to learn how to negotiate compromise. And as I said, the vast majority of times it's fine. I think my issue, because I came up as I did, not having come up through the legitimate route, was that oftentimes, particularly earlier on in my career, I'd be overly grateful for the situation. You should always be grateful. But I would find that my gratitude would almost become civility. And, that I would almost be overly grateful and therefore let myself be run over.
It's a bit imposter syndrome,
Absolutely.
isn't it? And
Absolutely.
Talking about that imposter, have you ever come across people who've been through the traditional route of conservatoires?
Yeah.
Have given you any kind of criticism or a hard time or any professional jealousy? Have you come across any of that?
No, but what I have come across is that certain people will say, where did you study? And I'll say, actually, with Christine Cunliffe.
No, yeah. No way.
but I'll say, actually, this is my route. And they don't know how to take it.
Yeah.
They don't know how to place it because they can't put you in a box. And I don't like boxes. And I like that. I like being free of that kind of segregation. So people have never said it to my face. Whether they're saying it behind my back, that's their business.
But that's their problem.
Yeah, I really couldn't care.
And with casting, so when you're writing, obviously, and you're fortunate to know the cast, as you were saying with Deanna, but do you envisage this voice?
Yeah.
Are you part of the casting process?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes, I am. For world premieres, I don't need to be part of it for the, you have to trust casting departments for that. But involved in oftentimes I'll know which singers I want to work with and we'll just give them a straight offer. With Leslie Garrett, for instance, with the women that were involved in the Jack the Ripper, the Women of Whitechapel Opera, all the principal roles were offered. They didn't have to audition. Leslie Garrett didn't have to audition. So what I will do is, of course not, what I will do is I will then meet with those singers, whether they're auditioned or whether they're just straight offers because they're stars. And I will anatomise their voices. So I will go through with them privately, either on the phone or actually with the piano, and I will take apart their voice, so in a good way. So we'll talk about where their golden parts of their voice are, because every voice has got a sweet spot. And every voice has also got little holes. And it's about knowing where all those things are, so you can then create something for the singer that actually makes them sound quite glorious.
And orchestration now, as you know, I've been on the front row of quite a few of your performances.
You sat next to me for Beowulf.
I did, and I didn't even know that. So going back to, and I think it was Jack the Ripper, I remember sitting down and watching the orchestra as much as I was because obviously being a musician, you're interested in what's going on. And with the orchestration, how do you, and I'm a musician, so I should be able to answer this myself, but I'm not a composer and I've never achieved what you've achieved. How can you visualise that?
So with any big task, and you're someone who's in charge of a lot of things at once, so I'm sure there are parallels. You have to break it down to its smallest form. You have to micromanage. So I know that I'm not going to have the whole orchestra playing full pelt the whole time. Yes, lots of the chunks you heard there in those trailers are because it's the trailer, that's the juicy bits. But you as a composer, it's incumbent on you to, I know for instance, when I'm writing, when I write a libretto, when I set the libretto, I will set the entire libretto, just the vocal parts and the piano. It's a very basic piano part. And then I'll come back and orchestrate. So when I'm doing the vocal lines, I aim to write about 1.5 minutes a day. And when I'm orchestrating, it's about 45, anything more than 45 seconds, and I hurry. I know within that orchestration time, I know within that moment within the opera that I'm orchestrating, I know what time of day it is. I know whether they're indoors or outdoors. I know what the mood is. I know whether there's a lot going on. All these things, atmospherically, emotionally, will will inform the instruments I choose, will inform the musical gestures, rhythmic gestures they're going to make. So I know that if something's freezing cold. So for instance, the opening of Act 2 of Jack the Ripper, The Women of Whitechapel, one of the women is out on the streets of London by herself and it's freezing. And so I thought, okay, what do I need? So what we have, for instance, in that, we start with really high, almost at the top of the register, violins going really quickly, soaring really quickly, tremolo, because that creates this kind of really high whistle, this faint cold that feels really cold. I think I have a tremolo cymbal that's going underneath, and it just creates this feeling of coldness. So that kind of thing I'm asking myself within every moment of orchestrating, because there's an answer to every question.
What's the most unusual instrument that you've used?
Oh, Jack the Ripper, there are two. Okay. Jack the Ripper had the cymbalum. So the cymbalum, I wanted, because Jack is not in it. I chose to not give any voice to a mass murderer, deliberately. But I needed to convey a presence. And this instrument, cymbalum, C-I-M-B-A-L-O-M, is the instrument. Look it up on YouTube. It sounds like a honky-tonk piano, but also like it's dripping. Like there's some kind of, because it's got an echo when you have a pedal down on it. It's got this kind of dripping antique quality.
And it was depicting the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very Victorian.
It was very clever. And I was actually thinking of that one before I asked you, and I didn't know what it was called.
The cymbalum.
Right.
Cymbalum.
Yeah.
And then in Beowulf, so I then did this huge epic telling of Beowulf with a 100-piece orchestra, 100-piece chorus, dramatic tenor and a narrator, Ruth Wilson. And I thought, well, I've got a 100-piece orchestra. Let's have some fun. So there's this instrument called a waterphone, which is it's a metal handle with a couple of dozen metal spindles which can come off it at angles, and you bow it, and it sounds like a horror film. It just sounds like a horror film. It says waterphone, one word. And
Brilliant.
I had fun. Kid in the toy shop.
So obviously you've got a very good routine during the day, and that's really important, as you know. But do you ever get those moments where you wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning and you go, do you do that?
No.
You don't?
No, I don't. I that must be like being a psychic or a clairvoyant. You kind of, the voices.
Do you dream it? Do you dream
No,
it?
no. So
don't?
I'm really regimented. I don't know if it's because of how I was.
Yeah.
I'd find time to write, and then I can just I sit behind a desk and it comes.
Right.
At my fingers and in my ears. When I'm away from the desk, I'm just listening to podcasts and I'm just me.
Right.
So I don't get haunted by
Do you ever sit at the desk? It's 9:30. You've been to the gym. You've got your breakfast. And you sat there and nothing.
Hasn't happened yet.
That's fantastic. And how? And because sometimes when you write a book or when you compose something, it's getting started, isn't it?
Yes. I mean.
Do you write a plan?
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. So bearing in mind, lots of what I do is setting text. So whether it's an opera, libretto, song cycles, not everything, but lots of what I do is. So I already have a schematic in front of me. I already have architecture that's been seen to by the librettist or the writer. So I've annotated this thing to high heaven, whereby you can hardly see the text, whether it's where the climaxes are, what instruments, what kind of vocal gestures. I have all these ideas that I've spent kind of good days or weeks on, depending on the length of the piece. And I know that in this time, that things are already happening underneath that I'm unaware of. I know that there are kind of channels forming and that synapse connections are being made, that when the time comes for me to sit behind the piano, once procrastination's over, I'm there and I'm in, and it comes. And I just know that I have to have faith in the process. Yeah, I get there'll be an hour and I'm like, I just can't resolve that chord properly. Why is that chord not voicing properly? And I just know I need to have a shower or go for a walk and it'll be fine. And it always is. I just have to trust the process.
Yeah.
Because if you then start holding it up for analysis, you're going to find too many holes. And
And with languages, and obviously you're passionate about languages, French in particular.
Yeah.
Your first opera's in Vienna, in German?
Yeah, no, English.
It was in English?
Yeah.
Okay, I sort of thought some German when on the screen there.
Yeah.
But when you compose in a different language, how do you get around that?
Oh, I love it.
Do you?
Yeah. It's again one of the things that scares me, which is why I've been doing a lot more recently.
Yeah.
So I've done some French, I recently did some Verlaine, and I've done some Italian recently, some Dante for Dante's big 750th anniversary. And they were great because they're Latin languages, and the French was fine, and with the Italian, I just had an Italian speaker, because I could speak Italian but not well. And I had an Italian speaker just recite the texts for me slowly, so I knew where the intonation was, so I knew where to accent, I knew where to pull back on. Last year, I had the world premiere of a piece in Nahuatl language, which is the ancient Aztec language.
Wow.
And that, well, one of my insistences was, I need a native speaker this minute, because I didn't, when I'm doing French, German, or whatever, I know what the subject, I know what the verb is, I know that if I don't understand it initially, I know word order. With Nahuatl, I had no idea what was who, he, she, go, tree, dog. You know,
And also interpretation of phrases or emphasis.
all of it.
Or...
All of it.
Yeah.
So having these native speakers really helps. But what I've also found that writing in different languages, it actually changes my melodic lines slightly. So French, with the French language as it is, I found that you have lots of words that have got they have equal rhythmic importance. So I find myself, rather than being dotted, I'd find lots of it would be very flowing and triplety. So da 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 da, just flowy, flowy, flowy. With the Italian, because it's such a beautiful voweled language, my lines were crazy long, like really long breathed lines. And then when I did the Nahuatl, it was so percussive. The phrases were shorter, and we had to kind of use the t, k, k. There's lots of tl, tl, and k. Use them as music themselves, and it just informs you in a different way. And I'm about to do something in Spanish, which I'm looking forward to, because I haven't done that one properly yet.
That'd be great as well. And I know, because when I have seen you, I've been fortunate to be at the front. So obviously in the Royal Opera House and the Barbican, loads of people behind me, literally, and I hear the applause. And then you get up on the stage and you take your bow.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What does that feel like?
I
mean, the Royal Opera House in particular.
So I went in my school uniform.
Really?
What I did not in my, well, I have to justify that. So when I was at the Royal Opera House, for in parenthesis, I went in my sixth form uniform. For St Bernard's, that was a black suit and a tartan tie.
Right, yeah.
I wore that. Not the exact uniform.
Sixth form, listen to this now.
So I thought, I need to pay. I'm in this place where I need to take where I've come from with me. It felt really important to take all those people that are important with me on stage with me, and have us all together. You, Alison Versier, all of you, Margaret Whale, all of you on stage with me at that one time, so we're together, because you're all part of that. So I wore that. It's really odd, because I, with an opera, did my job a year before you're hearing the applause. I handed that score in a year ago. So often it feels a bit, no, my job's done. It feels a bit, and then I often feel a little bit embarrassed. I feel a little bit shy, and I get a bit kind of coquettish, because I haven't been up there singing. I've just wrote something a year ago. Yeah, and
I understand.
There's a bit impostery, again, as you say.
It doesn't come across though, and especially when I saw you at the Barbican with you, that green suit. Where did you get that green suit from?
That was a gift.
Was it?
That suit was a gift, because 3 months before Beowulf, there was a gala in Prague that featured excerpts from 3 of my operas, from Harlot's Progress, Jack the Ripper, The Women of Whitechapel, and in parenthesis, and that was made for that gala. I thought, well, now I'm going to be conducting Ruth Wilson. I need to bring that suit out again. And I didn't know I was going to be conducting till 2 days before. And I was put in the audience to conduct, and I was shiny. And
that was unusual as well, because obviously you had your orchestral conductor in front of you, Ruth there, and then you were conducting her from there. That was quite an experience.
It was. But she's the most talented person I've ever worked with in my life. There's no one more dedicated and more just intensely talented as she is. She had come to my flat maybe 7 times to rehearse the piece, to coach the piece. For us, that moment, we're in fancy clothes, but it was just what we'd been doing in my room for a month before. So it just felt, now we get to do it with pretty clothes on in front of people. But what was amazing was that she and I were just the eye contact, because I was cueing her, because it was what she was having to do was so musically tied. It wasn't freeform.
But also, the two of you were so close together as well. It's almost like you were in your flat. It just so happened that you had a couple of hundred people behind you.
And my music teacher on my side. Just in case I made a mistake.
I have got one last question for you, because I know we're coming up to 2 o'clock now. Okay, so you want to be taken out your comfort zone, and you want something to scare you.
Yeah.
What comes next?
So I I told you I've done song cycles. Now, song cycles were a form that was particularly beloved in the mid-19th century. Schubert, Schumann were particularly good exponents of this. As time's gone on, song cycles have shrunk until 2, 3, 4, 5 songs long. Back in the day, they were 60 or 70 minutes long. I'm doing one of those.
Wow.
I'm doing a 70-minute long song cycle in Spanish.
Right, fantastic.
2026 7 season.
Wow. That's
So that is
amazing.
another, yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So look, Iain Bell, thank you so much for being with us today. A pleasure as usual. We're going off for lunch now, aren't we, Iain?
Yeah, that's I'm told.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm told.
So thank you so much. Thank you. And, you know, what a wonderful career. And I think you've proved to us and the children here and across the country that if you really want to do something, go out and do it.
Just listen to yourself. Listen,
Yeah.
listen.
Thank you. All right, have a lovely weekend, everybody.